everyone, my name is Callie Smith. I've selected the social penetration theory as it relates to social media and the impact that it has on our communication in modern society today. So I know that we probably all are familiar with the social penetration theory, but just to recap, we know that it's the basic framework by which we develop our relationships. It was developed by two psychologists, Irwin Altman and Dalmas Taylor, in 1973, and they really attempted to explain the variations of communication in relation to the information and the complexity or lack thereof of that information, and how we develop those individuals. So essentially, information sharing is directly related to the intimacy of a relationship. So what information we're willing to put out there can deepen, strengthen the relationship that we're in or not. Just to kind of put some imagery with it, think about a situation if you were to go to a restaurant with a friend. You might be sitting there talking about other friends, or, oh, did you see what someone put on Facebook, what someone said on Twitter? And next to you might be a married couple that is discussing, very, very serious family issues or decisions for their family. And on the other side of you, you might have a couple on their first date, exchanging, initial information. What's your name? Where are you from? How old are you? What year were you born? When were you born? Where were you born? That kind of thing. So just to kind of have a fun reference, if you think back to the movie Shrek, when Shrek is talking to Donkey and he explains that he is like an onion and he has all of these layers that will need to be peeled back in order for Donkey to really understand who Shrek is. That's kind of a fun little metaphor that Altman and Taylor kind of developed, that we are spheres, and at our outermost layers of our sphere, we have information about ourselves that we don't mind people knowing upon initial meeting, such as the way that we dress might suggest about us that we either put a high value on clothing and the way that we look, or a low value on clothing or with the way that we look. Also, things such as how we communicate with others upon initial meeting. Those are things that people can observe about us upon an initial meeting in our outermost layers. Our innermost layers are things that we are not really willing to share with people unless we have assessed the costs and rewards of sharing that information. They're more intimate, more secretive things that we hold very close and very deep down within us that we do not share until we have developed those relationships further. So essentially, we should also note that the theory was developed with socio-psychological approach and an economic approach to explain that individuals make assessments about what information to share, and essentially what relationships they want to pursue based on the cost and rewards of that information disclosure. There are two types of measurements, ways that we can measure the information: depth and breadth. And depth refers to the details in which about particular information that we share, and the breadth is various aspects of information that we might share. So we might share information about our hobbies, our family life, our career, our childhood, our pets. That's a wide variety of information that we can share that could potentially tell more about us as individuals. Altman and Taylor also established 5 stages of self-disclosure, essentially 5 stages of a relationship. And the stages are orientation, exploratory, effective, stable, and deep penetration. So I'll go over those quickly. The orientation stage is the initial meeting. Hello, how are you? What's your name? May move into something more: where are you from? How old are you? What are some of your interests? The exploratory affective stage is where friendships begin to form based on information shared. Typically, information that individuals share, they have things in common, so that's where the friendships form. The affective stage is where more details are shared, more deeper details are shared. And oftentimes where sociologists and psychologists note that romantic relationships begin to form. The stable stage is where the relationship participants establish that the information exchange is comfortable, that they're comfortable sharing information with one another, and they're exploring the idea of sharing more deep information. And the deep penetration stage is really where the costs and the rewards of the relationship are assessed. Oftentimes, this can either result in further pursuit of the relationship, or it can result in the distancing of the individuals and potentially the ending of the relationship. And there are really two different ways that this can go. These stages can go, and they can either go linearly, where they start, with the first stage and go straight down, or they can be cyclical, where they happen over and over and over again within one relationship. So now that we've covered that, let's talk about social media. I would be willing to bet that almost everyone has at least one social media account. And we recognize social media as tools that are mediated by the computer that help us engage with other people. In order to exchange information, we can share photos, videos, thoughts, ideas, that sort of thing. It's not even limited to those items, but just to kind of put a definition with it. We really started seeing social media develop around 1999 with Zanga accounts, throwing it way back there. MySpace in 2003, and then 2004, the whole game kind of changed when Mark Zuckerberg invented Facebook at Harvard University, which then later expanded and now has over 1.19 billion users around the world, if that is even comprehensible. And even today, we now have dozens and dozens of other forms of social media, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, other things that are very specific to specific groups of individuals. So, social media is a great thing to have, and it has some positives and negatives. So I'll go over those. Sociologist Paul DiMaggio observes that there are a lot of positive aspects to social media, one of those being that it brings people together who otherwise may not have been brought together. Family and friends that live on opposite sides of the country or even the world are able to share and disseminate information between themselves. And also convenience. It's super convenient to get on Facebook and message somebody or write on their wall rather than having to engage in a face-to-face conversation. And I think that we're all probably guilty of that at one time or another. But author Brian Jung also brings to the table that there are a lot of negative effects that social media has taken. For one, the poor use of grammar and sentence structure and writing in young adults, teens, and even now adults, that is spilling over into professionalism in the workplace, where you're using acronyms, you're using abbreviated words in professional and formal writing. It also discourages face-to-face interaction, just like I just mentioned. It also provides a false sense of protection, and this is one that I found particularly interesting, is that it's found that individuals are more likely to say things on Facebook than actually say them face-to-face or in a real social setting. Also, a 2010 case study at Case Western Reserve School of Medicine noted that hyper-networking, which is 3 or more hours of social media usage per day, resulted in depression, anxiety, even suicide, substance abuse, as well as desocialization of individuals who participated in excessive use of social media. And most importantly, we know that people are learning less and less how to engage socially and face-to-face. We see this, you could see it, I could guarantee you could see it if you went anywhere right now. So what does the social penetration theory need to become most applicable to expand on these ramifications. And basically, because our learning requirements should always be reflective of our social environment, it emphasizes a greater need for the development of a more predictable standard of measurement in our culture today. So I really believe that social media is a sign of our progress technologically and physically, but certainly not socially. I think it has done irrevocable damage to our interpersonal social communication skills. And we should all consider perhaps engaging a little bit less on social media and working a little bit more on our social and interpersonal communication skills, because we know that those are so valuable. Thanks for listening, guys.